A young woman's husband died in winter, and she was very sad. And here is New Year, the first New Year that they will not spend together. Cemetery outside the village, in the forest. And so, she decided to hang some toys on the pine tree next to the grave. It would rain. It's absurd, of course, but the woman is sad. It seemed to her that this would be right. It seems like congratulations, without depriving your husband of a holiday. And so, December 31st arrived. Of course, I was going to do this during the day, but I got busy with things, and it was getting dark. I decided to go anyway. She was not afraid of any living factors. The cemetery, although outside the village, was not far away. There are no animals, and there is no need to talk about an alcoholic in a winter rural churchyard. She collected the toys, took some candy and went. By the time I got there, it was already completely dark. She dressed up the pine tree and put candy on the snow. Winter evening, silence. And when Strashno Khan was about to leave, the woman began to feel uneasy. The realization came, what am I doing here, away from my son, away from people? Why did I have to come here at night? Moreover, the wind must have picked up, and the toys were clearly clanking behind me, as if someone were shaking a tree. Here it is quickly, and let's retreat. But it's scary to look back. She understands in her head that if even a shadow flickers near the grave, she will immediately have a heart attack. She walks as quickly as possible, narrower and far from her husband's grave, but the jingling doesn't stop, ding ding ding, as if right behind her shoulder. Then she ran as far as possible through the snow, and in a whisper she asked her deceased husband, Yura, help me. She ran to the cemetery gate, pulled it open, looked, and the top crossbar was wrapped in yellow rain, the same way she decorated the pine tree. Not a silver rain, Strashno Khan, but a yellow one, a rich, juicy shade. They had a lot of this at home, and she remembers well that when she entered the cemetery through the same gate, there were no frills there. Who will decorate the gate? Well, it's no longer scary there. The lights set close, and I ran home. In the spring, only then did I go to the cemetery, and not alone. The toys were hanging, and she didn't remember if they were all there, and there was very little rain. Maybe it was blown away by the wind. White shirt me grandmother's neighbor got sick. Just got sick. No high fever, no acute pain. They decided not to go to the doctor, although there was a paramedic station, and there was a good hospital in the neighboring village. I decided to rest for a couple of days and make do with the simple remedies that any housewife can find in her first aid kit. Some time passed and he seemed to be feeling better. Only in the evening he suddenly says to his wife, Valia, remember how they lent Ivan a white Strashno Khan shirt for the meeting? We should take it back. The wife can't even come close to understanding what he's talking about. Finally it dawned on her that, probably 15 years ago, neighbor Ivan asked him to wear a white shirt somewhere, but he never gave it to her. I don't think there were any selfish reasons. The profit wasn't great, it just happened that way. Yes, only when it was, and Ivan himself died 7 years ago. The wife asks, why do you need this shirt? Even if it's intact, it won't fit on you now. You've gained weight in 15 years, and it's not white anymore. No one needs old stuff. It's a shame to go to people and ask, like you didn't give us our shirt a decade and a half ago. You should go and embarrass yourself. And the neighbor is not far behind, asking his wife to be sure to find that shirt. Stuck and stuck. Valia Strashno Khan eventually agreed, came to her grandmother, and explained the situation. And surprisingly, the grandmother was not at all surprised. She went to the closet and took out a folded shirt, as if she had been lying next to me all 15 years. She apologized for the delay. Valia brought the shirt home. Her husband simply nodded, didn't seem happy, and didn't explain what it was for. He put it folded on the sofa, and late in the evening this is what happened. And almost completely healthy, as it seemed to his wife, man suddenly rose from the sofa, looked at the door and said, oh, here you are, I've packed everything, I'm ready. Then the attack began, and soon he was gone. Needless to say, no one came through the doors, at least no one visible. Dungeon Thayer was one house in the village, not particularly old. 3 or 4 generations grew up in it, and so the old people died. The children moved away, and the husband Strashno Khan and his wife were left alone. They were over 50 years old. Like every village house, they had an underground for potatoes and other vegetables, and they also stored all sorts of rubbish there. using the type of pantry, and then the wife began to notice. She would pick up some potatoes or something else and begin to climb up a small wooden ladder, and from below it seemed as if someone was pulling her back by the skirts of her robe. She turns around, naturally thinks that the fabric caught the step, but nothing of the kind. And once she climbed in a skirt, the skirt was without a fastener, with an elastic belt, so the skirt was almost pulled off of her. She immediately flew out of there and told her husband to let him go get supplies himself. The husband, apparently, blamed everything on the woman's nerves, took out vegetables and pickles. No one bothered him, and everything was fine until spring. And in the spring, Strash no. Com had to sort through the potatoes, throw away the rotten ones, and select them for seeds. The wife refused, and the husband went to work. And so, the hostess notices. He sits there for a long time and doesn't come out for smoke breaks. She called out to him once, twice, 3 times. My husband doesn't respond. She got worried, of course, came closer to the underground and called again. Kevin, are you coming soon? And then someone, instead of Kevin, answered her in a hoarse voice. No, not soon. I still have to rip it off. She jumped out of the house and ran to her neighbors for help. The men came running, climbed in, and the owner was lying underground between an earthen wall and the wooden side of a box with potatoes. There is an abrasion on the head, unconscious, but still alive. I didn't remember what happened to him at all. And interestingly, they did not leave this house. Apparently there were no opportunities, so they continued to live there. My name is Magda, and I'm 26 years old. I work in an office in the city. On weekends, I used to love to get away from all the hustle and bustle and take a trip to the countryside. Luckily, I have a cottage in a small village, which is located right at the edge of the forest. How I used to love to get out of the city and spend the weekend in my little cottage. Why did I stop? Well, I'll tell you. After a hard week at work, I needed a rest, so I decided to get out of town. I went home, packed my bags, threw them in the trunk and drove off. When I arrived in the village, it was late in the evening and I was tired from the long drive. I went straight to bed and fell asleep quickly. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of my car alarm going off. I looked out the window, but there was nobody in sight. I found my car keys, pressed the button to shut off the alarm. When the awful noise stopped, I lay down again and tried to fall back asleep. All of a sudden, the alarm went off again. I didn't feel like getting up, so I just grabbed my keys and pressed the button again. Everything was peaceful and quiet. 5 minutes later, the alarm went off a third time. Once or twice could have been an accident, but now I was wondering what was going on. Could someone be playing tricks on me in the middle of the night? I got up again and pressed the button to turn off the alarm, but this time, I didn't lay down. I stood at the curtains and watched. After a few minutes, I saw something by the light of the moon. A shadow emerged from the bushes and slowly approached the car. I could just about make out the shape. It was something tall, skinny, and black. The figure reached out with its long, thin arms and knocked on the car. The alarm went off again, and quick as a flash, the dark figure retreated back into the bushes. At that moment, I realized what was going on and began shaking with fear. I turned off the alarm and continued to watch. The thing emerged from the bushes again and slid silently over to the gate, threw a hand through them and removed a partition holding the gates closed. I was paralyzed with fear and I couldn't move. My mind was overcome by panic thoughts. What was it? What did it want from me? What was it doing? Would it ever go away? A shiver ran through my body, from my head down to my toes. My mouth was dry and my heart was beating fast. I was so tense. I was gritting my teeth and clenching my hands into fists. I got control of myself and ran down the stairs as fast as my legs would carry me, to the ground floor. I wanted to look for something I could use to protect myself. However, just as I was about to switch on the lights, I suddenly froze in my tracks. The dark figure was at the window. It was pressed up against a glass, staring in, looking to see whether or not there was someone home. I immediately ducked down behind the sofa and peered out. That's when I realized what all these tricks with the car were for. It was trying to lure its victim outside. I could not take my eyes off its hideous face. The skin was the color of ash and covered with wrinkles. Its eyes were small, beady, and completely black. Instead of a nose, there were two ragged holes. It didn't have any lips, just two rows of sharp, yellow teeth. Its breathing was so heavy and hoarse that it was misting up the window. I just knew it was not going to go away. After standing at the window for a few moments, I heard a rustling noise as it came to the front door. I watched as it tried to push its fingers through the gap under the door. The handle began to twitch wildly up and down, and then the creature emitted a chilling sound. It was not like the human voice. It was a deep, beastly growl, like an angry dog chewing on a bone. I knew that if it heard me, it would keep trying until it found a way to get into the house. I just crouched down behind the sofa, hiding in the shadows and desperately trying not to make a sound. Tears began involuntarily streaming down my face. No matter how much I tried to stop them, I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples and I was shaking like a leaf, just waiting for it to end. I don't know how long I cowered there. I must have passed out. When I woke up and looked at the door, the creature was gone. The door was still in place and everything seemed secure. I have never been so relieved in all my life. I ran upstairs and looked out the window. It was light outside and there was no sign of anything wrong. Taking a chance, I grabbed my keys and, without stopping to collect any of my things, I ran out to the car. I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove away from the village as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I got back to the city. When I got back to my apartment, I turned on the radio and heard a news report. The announcer said that in the village, the dead bodies of two girls had been discovered. Their corpses had been mutilated and dumped in a swamp. I guess the creature found what it was looking for. I'll start, perhaps, with the most distant story, which concerns my great-great-grandmother, and Clara, whose personality is legendary not only in our family. In our village, old-timers still remember her with kind words, since Baba Clara was, so to speak, knowledgeable. She could cure toothaches by laying on of hands. When I went to the forest, I left gifts for the devil so that he wouldn't make me run circles in the forest. In general, she was one of those people who were popularly called a witch in the good sense of the word. She also knew how to feel the dirty tricks that people did to each other with the help of witches, already in the bad sense of the word. It happens that a neighbor complains about a bad harvest or bad milk from her livestock, and then in the garden she finds some kind of ball of either hair or wool, or some unknown soil on the threshold. In such cases, the woman's name was Clara. She tells her granddaughter, my grandmother, to draw spring water from the well, sprinkle it on this rubbish, whisper something, and everything returns to normal. But one incident was by no means a petty dirty trick. Next door lived a large family with 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter, and it so happened that one of the boys fell in love with a girl from a neighboring village. They were a beautiful couple. Everyone couldn't stop looking at them, and only Grandma Clara complained, saying that it was in vain that the guy got involved with this young lady. She said, God forbid, he leaves her, then she will kill them all out of existence. And how she looked into the water. Something didn't work out between the couple, and the boy left the girl. He then went into the army and returned not himself, haggard, pale, and sick. When he returned, he lay down and never got up again. Everyone understood that the guy was not a resident, but you know how it was with medicine in the villages then. And so, his relatives come to my grandmother Clara and ask, come, they are calling you. Granny agreed, came into the dying man's room, and he suddenly began to look around and said, yeah, they finally hid. They got scared. Baba Clara also looked around and answered, my dear, there's no one here. Who are you talking about? Why not? Those black, crooked devils hid in the corners as soon as you entered. You, Babadan, stay with me for a little while. I can't live from them at all, and they are afraid of you. So Grandma Clara sat with the boy until he fell asleep. She made the sign of the cross over him, walked around the room with a prayer and a candle, and went home. And a couple of days later the boy was gone. The cause was indicated to be some hereditary disease related to the kidneys. In principle, according to the logic of things, his visions can be attributed to hallucinations from intoxication and dying delirium. But the story didn't end there. Soon another brother died, and after him the father of the family. all from the same disease, which had previously not made itself felt at all in either one or the other, and everything could have been attributed to this very disease. But soon the third son also died. He died in a field in winter, froze to death in a broken tractor, and behind him came the fourth, for unknown reasons. And so, only mother and daughter remained in the family. Of course, everything can be explained by that hereditary disease and tragic coincidence, but the fact that all the men in the family died practically one after another seems suspicious. Baba Clara said that the reason for this was the young lady with whom the first son to die in the family broke up. There were unkind rumors about her and her mother, saying that they were witches. Apparently, they cursed the entire family of offenders in the male line. The village where I live is not large, about 100 houses, some of which are abandoned. Almost everyone knows each other. There's just one peculiarity. There is no lighting on the main street. The light bulb burned out or something like that. They didn't want to fix it. I have friends. We live in different parts of the village, and if we go for a walk, I have to return home along the main street. Only in an instant everything changed. I stopped walking, became more withdrawn into myself. As usual, my friends and I stayed up late. It was summer, and our parents let us go, but we had to be home before 2 a.m. So I had to stomp home alone again without a flashlight. Fortunately, the moon was shining and everything was visible. From one end of the village I was returning to my own. Having already walked about half the way, I realized that someone was walking behind me. I didn't pay attention. You never know who might be walking. Maybe it was Uncle asterisk asterisk asterisk. So I continued on my way, immersed in my thoughts. I don't know why I turned back, but what I saw there made me first stop and then rush home as fast as I could. I had never run so fast in my life. She ran into the house, closed the first door, then the second, with locks. I was afraid to go outside after that for about 2 months. I didn't go further than the yard. I don't go out for walks, especially until late. Behind me was a creature about 2 meters tall, long arms reaching to the ground and a terrible smile on the floor of his face. I don't know how I didn't go crazy, but I'm terribly afraid of being alone. Here https://jitco.ru/vazati. The most terrible stories from life. The village in which I live is not large, about 100 houses, some of which are abandoned. Almost everyone knows each other. There's just one peculiarity. There is no lighting on the main street. The light bulb burned out or something like that. They didn't want to fix it. I have friends. We live in different parts of the village, and if we go for a walk, I have to return home along the main street. Only in an instant everything changed. I stopped walking, became more withdrawn into myself. As usual, my friends and I stayed up late. It was summer, and our parents let us go, but we had to be home before 2 a.m. So I had to stomp home alone again without a flashlight. Fortunately, the moon was shining and everything was visible. From one end of the village I was returning to my own. Having already walked about half the way, I realized that someone was walking behind me. I didn't pay attention. You never know who might be walking. Maybe it was Uncle asterisk asterisk asterisk. So I continued on my way, immersed in my thoughts. I don't know why I turned back, but what I saw there made me first stop and then rush home as fast as I could. I had never run so fast in my life. She ran into the house, closed the first door, then the second, with locks. I was afraid to go outside after that for about 2 months. I didn't go further than the yard. I don't go out for walks, especially until late. Behind me was a creature about 2 meters tall, long arms reaching to the ground and a terrible smile on the floor of his face. I don't know how I didn't go crazy, but I'm terribly afraid of being alone. Here https://jitco.ru/vazati. The most terrible stories from life.